Princess Lyra sat in her floating chair and looked out at the great hall where hundreds of alien visitors waited for her. The chair moved silently across the smooth floor, carrying her body that could not walk properly. Her legs were thin and weak, unable to support her weight for more than a few minutes at a time. The doctors called it a rare genetic condition that affected 1 in a million Valdorans, but everyone else just called it broken. The grand mating ceremony hall stretched out before her like a vast ocean of judgment. Golden pillars reached up to a crystal dome ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Representatives from 40 different alien species filled the space, each group wearing their finest clothes and displaying their greatest achievements. They had all come to compete for the chance to mate with a Valdoran princess, to join their bloodlines with the most powerful empire in this part of the galaxy. But none of them wanted her. Lyra moved her chair closer to the observation platform, where she could see everything. Her father, Emperor Valdris, stood at the center podium looking uncomfortable. The royal advisors whispered among themselves, their faces showing worry and shame. This ceremony was supposed to be a celebration, a chance to strengthen their empire through marriage alliances. Instead, it had become a public display of her worthlessness. The first group to present themselves was the Kethri delegation. These were tall, muscular beings with silver skin and 4 arms. They were famous throughout the galaxy as the greatest warriors, never losing a battle. Their leader, General Thax, stepped forward and bowed low to the Emperor. Great Emperor Valdris, General Thax said in his deep voice, the Kethri Empire offers our finest warrior prince to join with your noble bloodline. He gestured to a young male behind him who looked like he could crush steel with his bare hands. Prince Kor has won victories on 16 worlds and leads our most elite fighting unit. The Emperor nodded with approval. Princess Lyra will meet with your prince to discuss the arrangement. Lyra floated her chair down to the meeting area. Prince Kor looked at her with polite interest until he noticed her chair and her thin legs. His expression changed quickly. He tried to hide it, but she saw the disgust and disappointment in his eyes. They talked for exactly 10 minutes about trade agreements and military cooperation, but she could tell his mind was already made up. When they returned to the main hall, General Thax announced their decision. After careful consideration, the Kethri delegation must respectfully decline this union. Our warrior bloodlines require physical strength that can be passed to future generations. The hall fell silent. Lyra kept her face calm, but inside her heart was breaking. She had expected this, but it still hurt to hear it said out loud. The Emperor's jaw was tight with anger and embarrassment. The next group was the Nexri, a species known for their incredible intelligence and psychic abilities. They looked like humans, but with larger heads and pale blue skin. Their ambassador, Scholar Vex, approached with confidence. Emperor Valdris, the Nexri Collective offers our most brilliant mind for this alliance, Scholar Vex announced. Dr. Nix has made discoveries that have advanced our science by centuries. Together with Princess Lyra, they could create offspring with unmatched mental abilities. Dr. Nix was a female with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She spoke with Lyra about philosophy, science, and the nature of consciousness. For a moment, Lyra felt hope. Here was someone who seemed to value her mind over her body. They discussed quantum physics and military strategy, and Dr. Nix appeared genuinely impressed with Lyra's knowledge. But when they finished talking, Dr. Nix looked sad. She whispered something to Scholar Vex that Lyra could not hear. The ambassador's face fell. The Nexri Collective must also decline, Scholar Vex announced. Our genetic analysis shows that the princess's condition might affect the development of psychic abilities in potential offspring. We cannot risk weakening our bloodline. Another rejection. The whispers in the hall grew louder. Some of the alien delegations were already talking among themselves, probably planning their own excuses to leave without even trying. The Thraxian merchants came next. They were short, round beings covered in golden fur, who controlled most of the trade routes in 3 sectors. Their leader, Trader Bosgrix, was more direct than the others. We Thraxians value profit and efficiency above all else, he said bluntly. A mate who cannot travel easily or work in our trade stations would be a business disadvantage. We must decline. He did not even bother to meet with Lyra privately. The insult was clear to everyone in the hall. One by one, The other species made their excuses. The aquatic Delphi said they needed a mate who could survive underwater. The silicon-based crystallites claimed their biology was too different. The energy beings called Lumina said they could only bond with those who had perfect physical harmony. Each rejection was broadcast live across the galaxy. Lyra knew that billions of beings were watching her public humiliation. News reporters from hundreds of worlds were documenting every moment of her failure to find a mate. She would become a symbol of everything wrong with the Valderan royal family. As the day wore on, fewer and fewer delegations remained. Some had already left without even bothering to make formal excuses. Others were clearly just waiting for a polite moment to escape. Lyra's floating chair fell heavier with each rejection, even though it carried her weight perfectly. The Emperor looked older than his years. The royal advisors were having urgent whispered conversations about what to do next. Some suggested ending the ceremony early, to avoid further embarrassment. Others talked about finding a way to blame the princess herself for this disaster. Lyra wanted to disappear. She wanted to float her chair back to her private rooms and never come out again. But she was a princess of the Valderan Empire, and she had duties to fulfill even when they broke her heart. She sat straight in her chair and kept her face calm while inside she felt like screaming. The late afternoon sun was slanting through the crystal dome when the final major delegation made their announcement. The ethereal collective, beings made of pure energy who rarely took physical form, had been expected to at least consider the match since physical limitations meant nothing to them. Their speaker, a shimmering form of blue light, floated above the gathering. The ethereal collective finds a princess's mind admirable, but we require a mate who can transform between physical and energy states. This genetic limitation prevents such transformation. We must decline. That was it. Every major species in their sector of the galaxy had rejected her. The Emperor stood up slowly, probably preparing to end this humiliating ceremony, and declared a failure. The reporters were already sending out their stories about the princess nobody wanted. Just then, a commotion arose near the main entrance. Guards were talking urgently into their communication devices. A small group of beings had arrived late and were requesting permission to join the ceremony. "Who dares arrive so late to a royal ceremony?" demanded the chief advisor. The guard captain checked his device. "It is a human delegation, sir. They say they were delayed by engine trouble and request permission to present themselves." Humans. Lyra had heard of them but never met any in person. They were a young species that had only recently developed faster than light travel. Most other species considered them primitive and unimportant. What could they possibly want at a Valderan mating ceremony? The Emperor looked ready to dismiss them, but one of the advisors whispered urgently in his ear, probably reminding him that they needed all the allies they could get after this disaster. Even weak allies were better than none. "Let them enter," the Emperor declared with little enthusiasm. 3 humans walked into the Great Hall, and Lyra found herself curious despite her pain. They looked somewhat like Nexari, but with smaller heads and more varied skin colors. They wore simple military uniforms without much decoration. The leader was a male with brown hair and steady dark eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone used to command, but without the arrogance she had seen in so many other species. The human delegation approached the throne and bowed respectfully. Their leader stepped forward and spoke in clear, careful Valderan. "Emperor Valdris, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Space Defense Force. We apologize for our late arrival and request permission to participate in this ceremony if it is not too late." The Emperor looked surprised. Few species bothered to learn proper Valderan protocol, but this human had followed every rule correctly. "You may participate, Captain Morrison. Princess Lyra will meet with your delegation." As Lyra floated her chair toward the humans, she wondered what new form of rejection she was about to experience. Would they be disgusted by her condition like the Kethari? Would they worry about genetic complications like the Nexari? Or would they simply find some polite excuse like all the others? But when Captain Morrison looked at her, she saw something different in his eyes. Not pity or disgust or calculation, just interest and what seemed like genuine respect. This might be her last chance to avoid complete humiliation, but she tried not to hope. Hope had only brought her pain today. Still, As they moved to the private meeting area, she found herself wondering what the strange human might say to her. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the private meeting chamber with Princess Lyra and felt anger building inside him. Not anger at her, but anger at what he had witnessed in the Great Hall. He had watched species after species reject this remarkable woman based on nothing more than her physical condition. It reminded him of the worst parts of human history, when people were judged by things they could not control. The princess floated in her chair across from him, her posture straight and dignified despite everything she had endured today. Her dark hair was arranged in the complex style of Valdoran royalty, and her eyes held intelligence that impressed him immediately. She wore deep blue robes that matched the color of her world's oceans, and despite her obvious exhaustion, she maintained the grace expected of someone in her position. "Captain Morrison," she said in careful English, "I appreciate your delegation taking the time to meet with me, but I understand if you wish to make this brief. It has been a long day for everyone involved." Jake heard the pain she was trying to hide behind her formal words. She expected him to reject her too, just like all the others. She was preparing herself for one more disappointment, one more public humiliation. The thought made his anger burn hotter. "Princess Lyra, I would like to begin by saying that what I witnessed today was disgraceful." Jake said firmly, "The way those delegations treated you shows their weakness, not yours." The princess looked surprised. No one had spoken to her this way all day. Most had been polite but distant, treating her like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be known. "You are kind to say so, Captain, but we both know the reality of the situation," she replied. "I am not what any species wants in a mate. My condition makes me unsuitable for continuing strong bloodlines. With respect, Princess, I think you are wrong about that," Jake said, leaning forward in his chair. "May I ask about your education and experience?" Lyra looked puzzled by the question. "I studied at the Imperial Academy for 12 years. I specialize in military strategy, interstellar law, resource management, and diplomatic relations. I have served as an advisor on 3 border conflicts and helped negotiate trade agreements with 6 different species." "And the border conflicts? What was your role exactly?" "I developed the strategic plans that our generals used to resolve the conflicts without major loss of life," she said, though she seemed unsure why he was asking. "The Centauri Rebellion was ended using a supply line disruption strategy one designed. The Outer Rim disputes were settled through economic pressure tactics that I recommended." Jake smiled. "So you are telling me that you have personally prevented thousands of deaths through your strategic thinking, and you have helped maintain peace across multiple sectors of space?" "I suppose that is one way to describe it," Lyra said slowly. "Princess, on my world, we would call someone with your accomplishments a military genius. The fact that you did this while dealing with your physical challenges makes it even more impressive, not less." Lyra stared at him in confusion. "I do not understand. Are you saying that my condition is somehow an advantage?" "I am saying that your condition is completely irrelevant to your actual value as a person and as a leader," Jake replied. "Where I come from, we have learned that physical differences do not determine someone's worth or their ability to contribute to society." He stood up and began walking around the room, his hands clasped behind his back. "Princess, let me tell you about humanity. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest or the most advanced. But we have one quality that many other species seem to lack." "What is that?" "We adapt. When humans face challenges, we find ways to work around them. When our bodies cannot do something, we build tools to help us. When our natural abilities are not enough, we use our minds to overcome the limitations." Jake stopped in front of a window that looked out over the Valdoran capital city. "On Earth, we have humans who cannot walk, just like you. Some of them have become great leaders, brilliant scientists, and skilled warriors. We have built technology to help them move freely and participate fully in our society. You have others like me?" Lyra asked quietly. "We have people with all kinds of physical differences, and we have learned that these differences often make them stronger, not weaker. They develop mental abilities that others do not have. They understand challenges in ways that help them solve problems others cannot solve." The princess was silent for several minutes, absorbing this information. Finally, she spoke. Captain Morrison, why are you telling me this? Jake turned back to face her. Because I want you to understand something important. When I look at you, I do not see a disabled princess that no one wants. I see a brilliant strategic mind, a diplomatic expert, and a leader who has already proven her worth through her actions. But my genetics, my bloodline, your genetics include the intelligence to end conflicts without bloodshed and the wisdom to build peaceful relationships between different species. Jake interrupted. Those seem like excellent traits to pass on to future generations. Lyra's eyes were wide now. Are you suggesting that you would actually consider a mating arrangement with me? Princess, I am suggesting something that apparently no one else has bothered to do today. Jake said seriously. I am asking what you want. What I want. Yes. What do you want? Not what your father wants. Not what the Empire needs. Not what makes political sense. What do you personally want in a mate? The question seemed to shock her more than anything else that had happened. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. She looked down at her hands, then back up at Jake. I want someone who sees my mind before my body, she said finally. I want someone who values my thoughts and ideas, not just my royal title. I want someone who will not spend their life wishing I were different. Those seem like reasonable requests, Jake said with a slight smile. But they are impossible requests, Lyra replied sadly. No one will ever see me that way. I disagree. I think you are looking at someone who already sees you that way. The words hung in the air between them. Lyra stared at Jake as if she could not believe what she was hearing. Captain Morrison, are you saying that you would seriously consider a mating arrangement with me, even knowing about my condition? Princess Lyra, I am saying that your condition is not something I need to overlook or ignore. It is simply part of who you are, and who you are is someone I would be honored to know better. Jake moved closer to her chair. I have spent the last 2 hours listening to you talk about military strategy, diplomatic solutions, and resource management. You have insights that could benefit both our species. You understand challenges that I have never faced, and you approach problems in ways I never would have considered. But the physical aspects of mating, of producing offspring, can be addressed through medical technology and genetic counseling, just like any other biological challenge. Princess, humans have been solving physical problems for thousands of years. We do not see obstacles. We see engineering problems waiting for solutions. Lyra was quiet again, and Jake could see her mind working through everything he had said. He waited patiently, knowing that this was probably the first time anyone had ever asked her opinion about her own life. Captain Morrison, she said finally, if you are serious about this, there are things you need to understand about Valdoran culture and biology. I would like to learn about both. And there are things I need to understand about human intentions and expectations. I would be happy to explain anything you want to know. This is not a decision that can be made quickly or lightly. It would affect both our species and change both our lives forever. Jake nodded. I understand that completely. I am not asking for an immediate answer. I am asking for the chance to explore this possibility properly, with full honesty and mutual respect. Lyra looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of deception or hidden motives. Jake met her gaze steadily, letting her see his sincerity. Very well, Captain Morrison. I agree to consider your proposal, but I have conditions. Name them. First, you must spend time learning about Valdoran society and culture. You cannot make this decision without understanding what it truly means. Agreed. Second, I must understand human culture and expectations. I will not enter into an arrangement blind to what would be expected of me. Of course. Third, both of our governments must approve this arrangement. It cannot just be a personal decision between us. That makes sense. And fourth, Lyra paused, looking almost embarrassed. I need to know that this is not just pity or some kind of political calculation on your part. I need to know that you genuinely believe this could work. Jake smiled warmly. Princess, I can promise you that pity is the last thing I feel when I look at you. What I feel is curiosity about your ideas, respect for your accomplishments, and interest in learning more about who you are as a person. Then we have an understanding, Lyra said, and for the first time that day, she smiled genuinely. Captain Morrison, would you be willing to present your proposal to the Emperor and the assembled delegations? I would be honored to do so. As they prepared to return to the Great Hall, Jake felt a sense of rightness about this decision. He was not trying to rescue a damaged princess or make a political alliance. He was pursuing a partnership with someone whose mind impressed him and whose strength inspired him. The other species had looked at Princess Lyra and seen only her limitations. Jake looked at her and saw unlimited possibilities. When Princess Lyra and Captain Jake Morrison returned to the Great Hall, the assembled alien delegations were preparing to leave. Many had already departed, unwilling to witness any further embarrassment. The remaining species representatives stood in small groups, whispering among themselves about the failed ceremony and what it meant for Valderan diplomatic relations. Emperor Valdris looked up hopefully as his daughter approached for the human captain. The Emperor was a proud man who had ruled for 30 years, but today had aged him considerably. The public rejection of his daughter had been broadcast across the galaxy, damaging not just her reputation, but the entire royal family. "Father," Princess Lyra said formally, "Captain Morrison has requested permission to address the assembly regarding a potential mating arrangement." The hall fell silent. The few remaining delegations turned to stare at the small human, who dared to step forward after everyone else had rejected the princess. Some looked curious. Others appeared amused by what they saw as foolishness. General Thax of the Ketheri was still present, along with several other military representatives who had stayed out of diplomatic courtesy. He stepped forward with a sneer on his silver face. "Emperor Valdris, surely you cannot be serious about considering an alliance with this weak species." General Thax said loudly, "Humans have barely left their home system. They have no significant military power, no advanced technology, and no important trade relationships. What could they possibly offer the Valderan Empire?" Jake stepped forward calmly. "General Thax, you are correct that humans are young compared to other galactic species. But we offer something that seems to be rare in this galaxy." "And what is that?" the Ketheri general demanded. "We offer genuine partnership based on mutual respect rather than domination through superior force." Several alien representatives laughed at this statement. The Thraxian merchant leader, Trader Boskrix, spoke up from his position near the exit. "Respect does not build empires, human. Strength builds empires. Wealth builds empires. What can your primitive species contribute to a union with Valderan royalty?" Jake looked around the hall at all the species that had rejected Princess Lyra. "You want to know what humans can contribute? We can contribute the wisdom to see value, where others see only weakness. We can contribute the intelligence to solve problems rather than abandon them." He gestured toward Princess Lyra. Every delegation here today looked at Princess Lyra and saw only her physical condition. You saw what she cannot do instead of recognizing what she has already accomplished. That kind of thinking is why your empires will eventually fail. The Emperor raised his hand for silence as angry murmurs spread through the hall. "Captain Morrison, you may present your proposal." Jake bowed respectfully to the Emperor, then turned to address the entire assembly. "Princess Lyra has prevented 3 wars through strategic planning that saved thousands of lives. She has negotiated trade agreements that have brought prosperity to multiple systems. She has shown wisdom, intelligence, and diplomatic skill that any empire would value." He paused, letting his words sink in. The human delegation formally requests permission to pursue a mating arrangement with Princess Lyra, not despite her physical condition, but in recognition of her remarkable abilities and character. The hall erupted in shocked whispers and angry protests. Scholar Vex of the Nexery stepped forward, his pale blue face showing disbelief. "Captain Morrison, surely you understand the genetic implications of such a union. The princess's condition could affect any offspring produced." "Scholar Vex, human medical science has advanced techniques for addressing genetic concerns. We do not see genetic diversity as a problem to be eliminated, but as a source of strength to be managed wisely." "You cannot be serious," General Thax interrupted. "Your species has nothing to offer the Valderan Empire. No military strength, no technological advantages, no wealth or resources." Jake smiled slightly. "General, you are making the same mistake that every delegation here made today. You are judging based on current appearance rather than future potential." He activated a small device on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. It showed star charts, technological specifications, and resource surveys. Human space may be small now, but it is growing rapidly. Our technology may seem primitive, but it is innovative and adaptable. Most importantly, we understand something that apparently other species have forgotten. What is that? The Emperor asked, genuinely curious now. We understand that true strength comes from partnership, not domination. When humans face challenges, we work together to overcome them. When we encounter differences, we find ways to turn those differences into advantages. The holographic display shifted to show images of human cities and ships. Our architecture adapts to different environments. Our vehicles are designed to accommodate people with various physical abilities. Our society has learned to value contribution over physical perfection. Princess Lyra watched from her floating chair as Jake defended not just their potential union, but her own worth as a person. No one had ever spoken about her this way in public. No one had ever challenged an entire assembly of alien dignitaries on her behalf. Captain Morrison, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hall. You speak of human adaptability and partnership, but what do you personally hope to gain from this arrangement? It was a test, and everyone in the hall knew it. If Jake answered with talk of political advantages or military alliances, he would prove himself no different from all the others who saw her as a tool rather than a person. Jake turned to face her directly. Princess Lyra, I hope to gain a partner whose intelligence challenges me to think better, whose experience teaches me to lead more wisely, and whose strength inspires me to be more than I am alone. The honesty in his voice was unmistakable. Even the most skeptical delegates could hear the sincerity of his words. And what do you offer in return? Lyra asked. I offer complete acceptance of who you are, genuine interest in your thoughts and ideas, and a partnership where your voice will be heard and valued equally with mine. Emperor Valdris stood up slowly. The ruler of the Valdoran Empire had heard enough empty promises and political maneuvering for one day. He needed to know if this human captain was different. Captain Morrison, if this arrangement were to proceed, what would be your expectations regarding Princess Lyra's role in human society? Emperor Valdris, Princess Lyra would be welcomed as an equal partner in human leadership. Her strategic expertise would be invaluable in helping humanity navigate galactic politics. Her diplomatic skills would help us build better relationships with other species. And her physical condition would be accommodated with the same technology and support we provide for all our citizens who have mobility challenges. She would participate fully in all aspects of our society. The Emperor looked thoughtful. You speak of accommodation and support. Does this mean you view her condition as something to be fixed or cured? Jake shook his head firmly. No, Your Majesty. I view her condition as part of who she is. We would provide tools and support to help her accomplish her goals more easily, but we would not try to change her fundamental nature. This answer seemed to satisfy the Emperor, but General Fax was not finished with his objections. Even if we accept your claims about human society, Captain Morrison, what about military alliance? The Valdoran Empire faces threats from several hostile species. How can humans help defend our territory? General Fax, humans may not have the largest fleet or the most powerful weapons, but we have something that might be even more valuable. What? We have experience fighting against impossible odds and winning through creativity and determination. Human military history is full of victories achieved through unconventional tactics and innovative thinking. Jake gestured to Princess Lyra. Combine human adaptability with Princess Lyra's strategic brilliance, and you will have a military partnership unlike anything this galaxy has ever seen. The princess looked surprised by this suggestion. No one had ever proposed that her strategic skills could be enhanced by working with another species. You would want me to participate in military planning? She asked. Princess, I would want you to lead military planning. Human forces would follow strategies developed by the finest military mind I have ever encountered. The compliment was genuine, and everyone in the hall could tell. Jake was not trying to flatter the princess for political gain. He truly believed in her abilities. Emperor Valdris exchanged glances with his advisors. The day had started as a disaster, but this unexpected development was giving him hope. A human alliance might not carry the prestige of a Ketheri military partnership or the wealth of the Thraxian trade agreement, but offered something more valuable: genuine respect for his daughter. "Captain Morrison," the Emperor said formally, "the Valderan Empire agrees to consider your proposal seriously. However, such arrangements require extensive negotiation and cultural exchange. We understand completely, Your Majesty. Princess Lyra will spend time learning about human society and culture. You will remain here to learn about Valderan traditions and expectations. Only after both parties fully understand what this union will entail will any final decisions be made." The remaining alien delegations looked shocked by this development. They had expected to witness the complete humiliation of the Valderan royal family. Instead, they were seeing the beginning of what might become a significant new alliance. As the formal ceremony concluded and the various delegations began to leave, Jake found himself alone with Princess Lyra for a few moments. "Captain Morrison," she said quietly, "thank you for what you did today." "You do not need to thank me for telling the truth, Princess." "Perhaps not, but I do need to warn you about something." "What is that?" "Learning about Valderan culture will not be easy. Our society has expectations and traditions that may seem strange to humans." Jake smiled. "Princess, I think you'll find that humans are very good at adapting to new situations. Besides, I suspect that learning about your culture will be far easier than convincing your people that this arrangement makes sense." As they parted ways, both Jake and Princess Lyra felt something they had not expected to feel at the beginning of this day. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they had found something worth building together. 3 weeks had passed since the mating ceremony, and Captain Jake Morrison was beginning to understand the complexity of Valderan society. He spent his mornings learning their language, his afternoons studying their history, and his evenings discussing philosophy and strategy with Princess Lyra. Their conversations had become the highlight of each day for both of them. Jake discovered that Valdorans valued honor above almost everything else, but their definition of honor was tied closely to physical perfection and military strength. This explained why Princess Lyra had been treated so poorly by her own people. In their culture, physical weakness was seen as a character flaw that could contaminate entire bloodlines. Princess Lyra, meanwhile, was learning about human adaptability and innovation. Jake showed her recordings of human cities where people with all kinds of physical differences lived and worked together. He explained human technologies that help people overcome limitations rather than hiding from them. Most surprising to her was learning that humans often saw challenges as opportunities to become stronger and more creative. Their cultural exchange was interrupted on a quiet morning when urgent alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels, and military officers ran to the hallways with grim expressions on their faces. Emperor Valdris summoned his war council immediately. Jake was included because he was officially representing humanity in diplomatic negotiations, and Princess Lyra attended because she was the Empire's finest strategic mind, even if many people still refuse to acknowledge that fact. "The Skarx rebels have launched a massive attack on the Tertius colony," announced General Corden, the Empire's chief military advisor. "They have orbital bombardment ships and ground forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The colony's defenses are already failing." The holographic display in the center of the war room showed the battle in real time. Tertius colony was home to 12 million Valdorans and served as a major industrial center for the Empire. Its loss would be devastating both economically and politically. "What forces do we have available to respond?" the Emperor asked. "The Third Fleet can reach Tertius in 18 hours, General Corden replied. "But intelligence reports suggest the rebels have twice our firepower. A direct assault would likely result in heavy casualties and possible defeat. The Fifth Fleet could provide support, but they are currently 3 days away," added Admiral Vex. "By the time they arrive, the colony will have fallen." Jake studied the tactical display, while the Valdoran military leaders discussed their limited options. Most of their suggestions involved frontal attacks that would result in enormous loss of life. A few recommended abandoning the colony to preserve their remaining fleet strength. Princess Lyra had been silent during the discussion, but Jake could see her mind working as she analyzed the situation. Her floating chair moved closer to the holographic display, and she began manipulating controls to examine different aspects of the battlefield. "Princess," the Emperor said, noticing her activity, "do you have any observations about the situation?" Several of the military officers looked uncomfortable. They respected Princess Lyra's intelligence, but many still believed that physical weakness made someone unsuitable for military leadership. General Corden especially had always been skeptical of her strategic abilities. "Father, I believe there may be an alternative approach to this problem," Princess Lyra said carefully, "but would require cooperation with Captain Morrison's people." Jake looked surprised. "Princess, humans do not have any significant military forces in this sector. What kind of cooperation are you thinking about?" "Captain Morrison, you told me that humans excel at unconventional warfare and adaptive tactics. You also said that human technology focuses on efficiency and innovation rather than brute force." "That is correct." Princess Lyra manipulated the display to show a detailed view of the Skark's rebel fleet. The rebels are using traditional siege tactics. They have positioned their orbital bombardment ships in a standard defensive formation and are systematically destroying the colony's infrastructure before landing ground troops. "Yes, that is their usual approach," General Corden agreed impatiently. "What does this have to do with humans?" "Captain Morrison, do humans have any ships in nearby systems that could reach Tertius quickly?" Jake checked his communication device. "The exploration vessel Nova Dawn is currently mapping asteroids about 6 hours from Tertius. It is not a military ship, but it has advanced sensors and maneuvering capabilities. What about the human ability to modify equipment quickly?" "We are very good at that. Human engineers can adapt almost any technology for new purposes in a matter of hours." Princess Lyra smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Then I believe we can save Tertius Colony without a direct military confrontation." The Emperor leaned forward with interest. "Explain your plan, daughter." "The Skark's rebels are expecting a traditional response from our fleet. They have positioned themselves to defend against ships approaching from the most direct routes, but they have not considered the possibility of an unconventional attack." She manipulated the display to show the asteroid field where the human ship was located. "Captain Morrison, could your people modify that exploration vessel to appear as a disabled cargo ship?" "Probably, but I do not understand how that would help. The asteroids in that system contain rare minerals that the Skark's rebels need for their weapons production. If a cargo ship appeared to be carrying those minerals but seemed to be in distress, they would almost certainly send a boarding party to capture it." Jake began to understand. "You want us to use the ship as bait." "Not just bait. Captain Morrison, you said that human technology focuses on efficiency. Could your people create a device that would disable multiple ships at once? We have experimental electromagnetic pulse generators that could potentially shut down most electronic systems within a certain range," Jake said slowly. "But they have never been tested in real combat conditions." General Corden looked skeptical. "Princess, this plan is too risky. What if the human technology fails? What if the rebels see through the deception?" "General, what is the alternative?" Princess Lyra asked firmly. "A frontal assault that will cost thousands of lives and might still fail? Or abandoning 12 million citizens to rebel occupation?" The Emperor studied the tactical display for several minutes. "Princess Lyra, if this plan works, how would it affect the overall battle?" "Father, if we can disable even half of the rebel fleet, our third fleet would have a significant advantage in the remaining battle. Instead of facing impossible odds, they will be fighting an enemy with reduced numbers and damaged ships." "And if the plan fails?" "Then we lose one human exploration ship instead of losing our entire third fleet." Jake realized that Princess Lyra was offering to risk human lives to save Valdoran citizens. The plan was brilliant, but it would put his people in extreme danger. "Princess," he said quietly, "I need to contact my ship and discuss this with my crew. They would be volunteering for what amounts to a suicide mission." "I understand, Captain Morrison. I would not ask this if there were any other choice." Jake stepped away from the group to make his communication. The crew of the Nova Dawn listened as he explained the situation and Princess Lyra's plan. Their response surprised everyone in the war room. Captain Morrison came the voice of Commander Lisa Park, the Nova Dawn's commanding officer. We volunteer to attempt this mission. If Princess Lyra believes this plan can save 12 million lives, then we are willing to take the risk. Commander Park, you understand that this is extremely dangerous? Sir, we understood the dangers when we joined the exploration service. Besides, it sounds like an interesting engineering challenge. Jake turned back to the assembled Valderan leaders. My people agreed to attempt this mission. Emperor Valdris looked impressed. Captain Morrison, why are your people willing to risk their lives for Valderan citizens they have never met? Your Majesty, humans believe that protecting innocent people is worth any risk. We do not distinguish between human lives and alien lives when it comes to preventing suffering. General Corden still looked doubtful. Even if this plan works, how do we coordinate the timing with our fleet movements? Princess Lyra had already considered this problem. I will personally coordinate the operation from here using our long-range communications. Captain Morrison's ship will report to me directly, and I will signal our fleet when to begin their attack. Princess, you cannot command a military operation from your condition. General Corden began, then stopped himself as he realized what he was about to say. General, Princess Lyra said coldly, my floating chair has full communication and tactical analysis capabilities. I can coordinate this operation more effectively from here than anyone could from a ship in the middle of a battle. The Emperor made his decision. Princess Lyra will coordinate this operation with full authority. General Corden, prepare the Third Fleet for unconventional tactics. Captain Morrison, have your people begin their modifications immediately. Over the next few hours, Jake watched Princess Lyra transform from a diplomatic negotiator into a military commander. She monitored multiple communication channels simultaneously, tracked the movements of both friendly and enemy forces, and made tactical adjustments in real time as the situation developed. The human crew of the Nova Dawn worked with remarkable speed to modify their ship. They disguised it as a damaged cargo vessel, installed the experimental electromagnetic pulse generator, and loaded fake cargo containers that would appear valuable to enemy sensors. As the modified ship approached the rebel fleet, Princess Lyra maintained constant communication with both the humans and the Valderan forces. Jake watched her coordinate timing, adjust tactics, and solve problems as they arose. Her strategic brilliance was fully displayed for the first time in front of the entire military leadership. Rebel ships are moving to intercept the human vessel, reported the communications officer. Nova Dawn, maintain your distress signal, but do not appear too eager to be rescued. Princess Lyra instructed calmly. Third Fleet, begin moving into position, but stay outside sensor range until I give the signal. The plan worked perfectly. The rebel boarding parties focused on capturing what they thought was valuable cargo, bringing their ships close together around the human vessel. When Princess Lyra gave the signal, the electromagnetic pulse disabled 6 rebel ships simultaneously. The Third Fleet's attack caught the remaining rebels completely unprepared. What should have been a devastating defeat for the Valdorans became a complete victory with minimal casualties. As reports of success came in from across the battlefield, the war room erupted in celebration. For the first time in his military career, General Corden looked at Princess Lyra with genuine respect and admiration. Princess, he said formally, your strategy saved both the colony and our fleet. I apologize for doubting your capabilities. Jake felt proud as he watched Princess Lyra accept congratulations from the military leaders who had dismissed her for so long. She had proven that her mind was her greatest strength, and that physical limitations meant nothing when it came to strategic thinking and leadership ability. The successful mission changed everything between them and marked the beginning of real respect from the Valderan military establishment. The success at Tertius Colony changed everything for Princess Lyra and Captain Jake Morrison. News of their joint operation spread across the galaxy within days, carried by the same reporters who had covered her humiliating rejection ceremony just weeks before. Now, they were telling a different story about the disabled princess and the human captain who had saved 12 million lives through innovative thinking and perfect cooperation. Emperor Valdris called for a formal celebration in the Great Hall, where the mating ceremony had taken place. This time, however, the hall was filled with cheering citizens and military officers who finally understood Princess Lyra's true worth. General Corden himself presented her with the highest military honor the Empire could bestow, the Star of Strategic Excellence. Princess Lyra, the general announced to the assembled crowd, your brilliant strategy and flawless execution of the Tertius rescue operation exemplify the finest traditions of Valderan military leadership. You have proven that true strength comes from the mind, not just the body. Jake stood beside her as she received the honor, feeling proud of her achievement, but even more proud of how she carried herself. Despite years of rejection and dismissal, she accepted the recognition with grace and humility. She did not gloat over her vindication or express anger at those who had doubted her. After the formal ceremony ended, Princess Lyra requested a private meeting with her father and Captain Morrison. They gathered in the Emperor's personal study, a quiet room filled with books and historical artifacts from across the Valderan Empire. "Father," Princess Lyra said, "I have made my decision regarding the mating proposal." Emperor Valdris looked at both his daughter and the human captain. Over the past month, he had watched them work together with remarkable harmony. Their success at Tertius had convinced him that this unusual alliance might be exactly what both species needed. "What have you decided, daughter?" "I accept Captain Morrison's proposal, with certain conditions that I believe will benefit both our peoples." Jake felt his heart rate increase. Despite their growing closeness, he had not been certain of her decision. The formal nature of Valderan society made it difficult to read her true feelings sometimes. "What conditions do you propose?" the Emperor asked. "First, this will not be a traditional Valderan mating arrangement where one spouse dominates the other. Captain Morrison and I will be equal partners in all decisions affecting our lives and our work." "Agreed," Jake said immediately. "Second, we will establish a joint research program between human and Valderan scientists to develop better assistive technologies for people with physical differences. Both species have individuals who could benefit from such cooperation." The Emperor nodded approvingly. "That would strengthen both our civilizations." "Third, we will create a new military unit that combines human adaptability with Valderan strategic training. This unit will serve both empires and help other species who request assistance with unconventional threats." Jake smiled at the suggestion. "Princess, that sounds like something that could revolutionize how military conflicts are resolved throughout the galaxy." "And fourth," Princess Lyra said, looking directly at Jake, "we will establish colonies where individuals from all species can live and work together regardless of their physical abilities or social status. These colonies will demonstrate that diversity creates strength, not weakness." "Princess," Jake said softly, "those conditions do not just create a marriage between us. They create a new model for how different species can work together." "Exactly. Our union should benefit everyone, not just ourselves." Emperor Valdris stood up and walked to the window that looked out over his capital city. "Daughter, what you are proposing goes far beyond a simple mating arrangement. You are talking about fundamental changes to how both our societies operate." "Yes, Father. The old ways of judging people by their physical appearance and species membership are failing. The other empires who rejected me at the ceremony are facing rebellions, economic problems, and social unrest because they refuse to adapt to change. And you believe that human and Valderan cooperation can address these issues?" Jake stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I believe that Princess Lyra and I together can create something neither of our species could achieve alone. We have already proven that our different strengths complement each other perfectly." The Emperor was quiet for several minutes, considering everything they had said. Finally, he turned back to face them. "Very well. I approve this union and all the conditions you proposed. Captain Morrison, do you accept Princess Lyra as your equal partner in all things?" "I do, Your Majesty." "Princess Lyra, do you accept Captain Morrison as your equal partner in all things?" "I do, Father." "Then let us begin planning a ceremony that will celebrate not just your union, but the birth of a new alliance between our peoples." The wedding ceremony took place 2 months later in the same great hall, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Representatives from dozens of species attended, not as potential suitors, but as witnesses to something unprecedented in galactic history. Many of the same aliens who had rejected Princess Lyra now sought audiences with her, hoping to benefit from a new human-Valdoran alliance. Princess Lyra wore traditional Valdoran royal robes modified with human technology that allowed her to stand for the ceremony while still providing the mobility support she needed. Jake wore a combination of human military dress uniform and Valdoran ceremonial elements, symbolizing the joining of their two cultures. The ceremony included customs from both species, creating new traditions that honored their different backgrounds while celebrating their shared future. When they exchanged vows, they spoke in both languages, promising to support each other's dreams and work together to help others achieve their full potential. The most moving moment came when Princess Lyra addressed the assembled guests in her role as both a Valdoran royal and a human partner. For too long, our galaxy has been divided by prejudice and fear of difference, she said, her voice carrying clearly throughout the hall. Species judge each other based on physical appearance, technological advancement, or military power. Individuals are dismissed because they do not meet arbitrary standards of perfection. She gestured to her floating chair and to Jake standing beside her. But today marks the beginning of a new era, an era where value is measured by contribution, where strength is found in cooperation, and where differences are celebrated as sources of innovation rather than reasons for rejection. The audience listened intently as she continued. The Human-Valdoran Alliance will demonstrate that when different peoples work together with mutual respect, they can accomplish things that neither could achieve alone. Our colonies will welcome individuals from all species who share our vision of inclusive cooperation. Jake then spoke about humanity's commitment to this new vision. We humans have learned through our own difficult history that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We are honored to work with Princess Lyra and the Valdoran people to create communities where everyone can contribute their unique abilities to the common good. The ceremony concluded with a surprise announcement from Emperor Valdris. As my first act in support of this new alliance, the Valdoran Empire is establishing the Lyra Morrison Institute for Adaptive Technology. This research center will develop innovations to help individuals of all species overcome physical and social barriers to full participation in galactic society. Over the following months, the impact of the Union became clear throughout the galaxy. The first joint human-Valdoran colony welcomed settlers from 15 different species, including many individuals who had been marginalized in their home societies because of physical differences or unconventional thinking. The new military unit, which became known as the Adaptive Response Force, successfully resolved 3 major conflicts using innovative tactics that minimized casualties while achieving decisive victories. Other species began requesting their assistance with problems that traditional military approaches could not solve. The technology sharing program produced remarkable innovations. Human adaptability combined with Valdoran precision engineering created devices that revolutionized life for people with disabilities across dozens of worlds. Valdoran's strategic thinking enhanced with human creativity led to new diplomatic approaches that prevented wars before they could begin. Princess Lyra and Jake established their primary residence on the first colony world, which they named Hope Station. From there, they coordinated research projects, diplomatic missions, and military operations that demonstrated the power of inclusive cooperation. The most satisfying moment came when General Thax of the Kethri, who had been among the first to reject Princess Lyra, requested a meeting to discuss joining the alliance. The proud warrior species had suffered serious defeats in recent conflicts and realized they needed new approaches to succeed in a changing galaxy. Princess Lyra, General Thax said formally during their meeting, I must apologize for my previous judgment of your worth. I see now that my focus on physical strength blinded me to more important qualities. General Thax, you are welcome to join our alliance if you truly believe in our principles of equality and mutual respect. Princess Lyra replied graciously, I do believe in them now. The Kethri Empire has learned that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. Jake watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. The princess who had been rejected by everyone was now being courted by the same species that had dismissed her. But more importantly, the galaxy was slowly learning that cooperation produced better results than domination. as they stood together on the observation deck of Hope Station, looking out at the ships from dozens of different species working together in the orbital construction yards. Jake reflected on how much had changed since that first ceremony. "Princess," he said, using the title she had kept even after their marriage. "Do you ever regret accepting my proposal?" Lyra smiled and took his hand. "Jake, you gave me something I never thought I would have." "What is that?" "A partner who sees possibilities instead of problems, and a chance to help others find the same acceptance and opportunity." Together, they had created something that neither humans nor Valdorans had imagined possible, a truly inclusive galactic community where everyone could contribute their unique strengths to building a better future for all species. Their love story had become something much larger than a simple marriage. It had become proof that when people choose cooperation over competition, understanding over prejudice, and inclusion over exclusion, they can accomplish miracles that transform entire civilizations.